Welcome dear viewers, I'm Xnick, and today I just wanted to share my opinion on what is the state of the game Magic Duels and what I think about some things that led to the state that it is now. First of all, this is mostly some criticism from my side. Maybe you share some of my opinions, but I don't want to be too negative because I love the game. I really appreciate that it is free to play, and I have enjoyed the game, and I expect to enjoy that one quite a lot of it. So this is just a list of things that I believe that if the game designers or the people in charge was taking into account, maybe the game would have a massive success and beat the charts, and we will be seeing maybe a different state of the thing that is going under the radar because there's no enough hype about the game anymore, and there is not going to be any more updates, actualizations and fixes or anything. So let's see what is here on the number 10. What did I say? Well, the game was not taken seriously. It was regarded mostly as an introduction for new players before they play real MTG. So I think that this is no, I don't know why is this the number 10, but perhaps the numbering doesn't matter at all the reasons are equal here. But I think that the game is if it was said that the game was casual, and therefore if the game had some problems or issues, it didn't matter too much. The people behind just left some of the mistakes that they made going on, and then just expected the players to get involved for a little time and then move on to another product of theirs instead of stay in the game. The ladder system is not pretty challenging enough. For instance, myself, I don't care any about my rank at all. I think that's meaningless. Yeah, and that's it. The game was left in the third-party hands, and the owner of MTG gave them the leash and the creativity to do as they pleased, and I think they did not follow up closely enough what was going on. Then let's move on. Number 9, which is the some MTG rules were slightly changed. For instance, we don't get the priority during the untap or draw and upkeep. They all happen at the same time unless you have some trigger effect during the upkeep or draw, but where you should be able to play some things you cannot because you don't get the priority. And there are some other things that were changed. It was not always the same during the course of the game history. For instance, there was no concept of floating mana at the beginning. Some other things, resolving some effects. For instance, you don't get to choose the order in which some triggers that happen at the same time will resolve, and it can impact some of the games. Also, I'm sure I'm missing something, but you get the idea. So the rules that are in the game are not the same rules that you are going to be using in a paper game or other different platforms. So, and that of course is not going to make the good players happy about this. Okay, number 8, we get the card pool. It didn't include the complete sets, and many cool cards were left out, and the cards we got were not balanced. So there there had been some changes in the cards that were out there, but I think that in the first place there shouldn't be a need for that, because if the cards are not getting banned in the paper format, why do we have to change the cards that we get in the game? So the reason behind the changes that occurred was that people were getting tired of seeing the same cards over and over, and the reason... Okay, that's a bike, we know that. So the reason for players using the same cards over and over is that the cards that we have available, the cards that we have access to, are not designed to live in the environment of the Magic Duels, so we are missing some of the legs of the table, for giving a metaphor of what's going on. So take a look at this declaration in stone, for instance, that can break many decks on its own. It shouldn't be the case, but it happens. Or there was a time that we had access to acidic Bongwali Moss, well, the card that destroys a lands, I don't recall the name, but it doesn't matter, destroys a lands and fetch you a forest. That's pretty devastating for many players. So in the age of Ulamox, that the first player to get that card win the game most of the time. So yeah, there shouldn't be that situation going on in Magic, on paper Magic, and because we don't get all the cards in the sets, then some strange scenarios arises in this game. And of course there are complex cards that may be too difficult to comprehend. For instance, Emrakul, that the programmers decided to leave out because it was very strange to include. Ultimately that card was banned. I'm not too mad about that precise example, but there are many cards that we get that do pretty much to nothing, like Neutrals vanilla cards, and we are missing planeswalkers and enchantments, and enchantment removal is the most notorious thing that we are lacking, and we are missing lands, multicolored lands from many sets, which is connected to some of the other points in this list. So moving on to number 7. What is this? Number 7 is the same as number 8. Number 6, let's go. Doesn't matter. Number 6, deck building limitations. So this is closely related with the former point, because we cannot get 4 of the same cards in most scenario. The card that we want to have many of the same in a deck, we can't. We can, for instance, have just one of the mythics. Green Quarter of Mirage. I would love to have 4 of them in my single deck, and of course 4 Anointed Processions. That will be a disaster for the game, of course, but it's so funny. But the deck that we can make in the game is not the same deck that we can make on paper, and this connection between the paper and the virtual game, I think that can drive some players away. If you want to play the same deck in Magic Duels, you are probably not going to be able to. Yeah, that's really a very stupid limitation, but I think the way I see why it was stated like this is because the packs in the collection have a definite set of, if you buy the wall set, you get the entire collection, and then if you get 4 of everything, that means that the rarity doesn't matter. If you get 4 of everything, then what's the difference between a mythic and a common? And therefore that's the way that we get the decks in the Magic Duels. But it could be done differently. We could maybe get a system that in which we keep opening packs and there is not a fixed card pool that we get. What else? There are many cards that we see in the adventures that we don't get to use in the deck building. That's a terrible idea. There's lots of contents in the game that we can only use in the adventures and not against other players, and that's very sad, because I think it would take no effort to add many more cards already without doing pretty much anything, any modification to the game. The content is already there, and also if suddenly they decided to start selling more packs so you get to 4 copies of anything, then people maybe would start inputting more money in the game. That's a very good deal, I guess, but we are not going to see that anyways. Number 5, let's hope it's different from number 6. No variety of formats. Yes, I think that's a downside of the game. At the beginning there was only Magic Duels Origins and everybody was playing with the same set, but then the sets started appearing, and then we got a strange mix of Among Cat cards with Origins cards. So that's, if you are a new player that starts playing today here, you're not going to want to spend that many time or money getting all the cards, and probably just for a particular card that you like from one set. Yeah, that just makes no sense. But if instead we have some formats, there are many options that we can use, where maybe a deck with no Origins cards, a format with no Shadows over Innistrad, and so on, then maybe players can be more engaged in maybe opening just one of the sets, and that means the players will want to play more, and therefore when more players want to use the game, is better overall. And also there are many game modes that we see in paper and on previous instances of this series of Duels of the Planeswalkers games. For instance, free for all game with 4 players going at each other, draft mode, many others. I don't even know all the modes possible, but of course we get 2-headed giants, which is pretty funny, but it's a pity that it doesn't get a ladder for 2-headed giant. But it's one of the best things of the Magic Duels. But it didn't work at the beginning. It was horrible when we get the first instance of the game. So speaking of which, I think that it's very important to mention that there were a lot of bugs in the game, and we shouldn't complain about the bugs it's themselves. There were many, and any game is going to have bugs, but the thing that bothered the players the most is that the bugs were lurking around for too long. For instance, we had to wait for a new expansion to get the bugs fixes. With the exception of the release bug, some systems couldn't run the game. They were getting the blue screen of death, and the game just crashed. Some bugs relating with transactions, but other than that, cards interactions that are bugged just take too long to fix. Maybe even 2 expansions are out with the same bug lurking around. And the most dramatic bug that was inserted as a feature in the game was the priority bug, which basically meant that you could not make use of your instants or activated abilities just like that, just because the game, the makers decided that it was a good idea to make the turns go as fast as possible, and therefore we were playing without instants for quite a while, and the the lack of testing on the game is really bad, guys. I'm sure that nobody tested that feature before they released it, and then many players left the game in anger, and I understand them, because there are other options. If you want to play a game, you want to enjoy it and not suffer it, and I think that is understandable why it takes so long to fix, because the game, the Magic Duels, is a multi-platform game, and you have to fix, when you want to make a modification, you have to take into consideration the Steam version, the Xbox version, the Apple version for the iPads, and all the languages, and you have to ask for the permissions, and it's really a pain to the makers of the game to modify a tiny thing. So I think I understand why the bugs were left for so long without touching, but that doesn't change the fact that the players were the victims of such things, which could have been fixed by more testing, or maybe if the third party was totally in charge. I think that it was a mistake to make the game run on Steam and the others. I would have preferred that there was a dedicated server for the games. Well, anyways, moving on. Number 3. What is more important than the bugs? Here, a lack of obvious features that the game should have had in the first place, but we either got them too late or we never got them, and there are many of these. Just to name a few, we don't have a text search in the editor of the decks. We cannot play best of 3 games. We just go playing one game against a random opponent, and that's it. There's no lobby, so we cannot search for certain players. That would be a remedy for the former one, but it would be nice to hang out with other players speaking of whatever, but we just meet with a random opponent. We just meet the guy by dropping cards on the board and making moves, and that's the only interaction that we get. We cannot chat with the guys, we cannot send any signal, which is horrible in two-headed giant with a random partner. That's so painful. And if the two-headed giant worked better, it couldn't be a problem. I tried playing with Steam friends in PC, of course, but there were so many connection problems that it was really a bad experience. Many times one of us two started the game and the other was dropped. Sometimes we were facing each other instead of being on the same team. Really a bad experience in general. And if you pair with a random partner in Two-Headed Giant, you want to be able to chat with your partner. And there's no game log, so you don't get to see what's going on. If you look away from the screen, you maybe cannot figure out what your opponent is doing, if he revealed some cards, if he searched the library, sacrifice some token. It could be nice if we get to see the game log, to learn from our games, to know what's going on, and in general to play better and to share the games with others. We don't always want to be recording the games and so on. And of course, we could make a whole video about features that the game does not have, but just look on the competitions. There are other games out there that can be used as a benchmark for Magic Duels, and you will see what's going on. For instance, X-Mage or Magic the Gathering Online. And if you know some other, leave the comment in the chat of the video and the comments for other viewers. And let's get to our number 2, which is player isolation. I think this is a very dramatic, very bad choice from the makers, that they shouldn't have used it in the first place. Probably it wasn't intentional, but the Steam, the Xbox, the iPad communities were separated. That means that a PC player cannot challenge an Xbox player and so on, which if they had make that thing available, it will be a breakthrough in the game industry that probably would skyrocket the player base of this game. But it's a pity that is an opportunity that went by. Probably is not easy technologically. It sounds strange, but I think that for legal reasons and compatibility reasons, it's not that easy to make. But if you look at some other interactive games, browser-based games, they don't have such issues. So perhaps it was a bad move to make that. And there's a very important aspect of this very strong situation here that of course has occurred. I'm aware of some cases. If you are an Xbox player and start dropping time and money in the game to get cards, and then someday you decide that, for instance, there are not enough players in the Xbox community and you want to move to Steam, you have to start over all your acquisitions, all your transactions and packs do not transfer over to the other system, which is a no for it's a detrimental condition for some, and of course not many people are willing to pay twice for a game that with all the other reasons present is not so tempting. And we cannot chat. How is that possible? We cannot even speak with our partners from Two-Headed Giant or with our opponents. We cannot even send not even wink at the opponent. One has to rely on the Steam community or some whatever system you are on to have interactions. And just to let you know, I'm a strictly free Steam user, so I have a limited account in Steam. I have all the cards anyways, but it doesn't matter that I cannot chat with anybody, that I cannot invite friends, I cannot participate in the discussions in the Steam forums. Many things are not accessible for me, but anyways, I would love to chat with players, but I'm not interested in any other Steam games, so I'm not thinking about using money at all on Steam. And I miss the chat, but I'm not going to spend $5 so I can maybe add some friend sometime. And our number one, what is it, is reasons that made players sad is that the game got carried away by external phenomena, because there were paper releases, and that made the Magic Duels rush into release some expansions on the same date that they released it on paper, which led to the bugs, which led to rushing the cards. We lost. I think that there was not a real need to release the expansion in Magic Duels at the same time than in paper, and I would really prefer that we get a better product instead of an early product. And also we have a competing game from the Wizards of the Coast makers, an official online game for Magic the Gathering Online, which is a competition for Magic Duels, which has a very strong, solid player base, and the reason for that is that you have to buy your cards in Magic the Gathering Online. There is no system like in Duels where you can just play long enough and get all your cards for free. Instead, you have to buy them in Magic the Gathering Online, and it has been around for too long, which means that players from there have spent thousands of dollars in having the digital cards, which they don't get the paper copy of them, which is really a bad idea for a digital game. But there's no way you are going to convince some MTGO player to move to Magic Duels and spend time and money on this game, because he has already invested so much in Magic the Gathering Online that he is just not moving away unless you give him something. I mean, if you say, okay, you have the same cards that you have on Magic the Gathering Online, then maybe some players can shift programs, but it was never the case, nor the intentions. I don't exactly know how they decided to do that, but keeping two programs at the same time, which plenty of maintenance required, seems like a lot to do. And you are looking, of course, the most influential thing that was there for Magic Duels was Hearthstone, and I think that behind the curtains, the makers of the Magic Duels were trying, obviously, to compete with Hearthstone and to have a similar success. Hearthstone is one of the most I think it's, in terms of money and getting new players, is the best game, the best card trading game that there is, Hearthstone. And I think that Magic Duels tried to copy many of the things that Hearthstone does. There are many examples of this that could deserve an entire video. And speaking of which, the upcoming Magic Arena is a more closely related copy of Hearthstone. The visuals are the same, really. Same type of cards, same type of boards. Someday I'm going to speak about that. But I think for Magic Duels, trying to do the same things that Hearthstone does was a mistake. The free-to-play model from Hearthstone was translated to Magic Duels, but with some strange modifications, and it didn't work, because in Hearthstone you get random cards when you go to buy them. That keeps your players inputting more and more money. There's events, there's a ladder system with a better ranking rewards. Hearthstone is superior in a digital card game, and Magic Duels was trying to translate the paper game into the digital format of Hearthstone, which I think they failed, and they shouldn't have tried to do in the first place to begin with, and try to make a game that lets Magic players play Magic. And well, that's my opinion, but I want to recall or remember you that I love the games Magic Duels. I really appreciate that it is free to play, otherwise I wouldn't be playing it, and I have tons of fans, and I don't want to be too negative, and I expect to have a nice game. And soon we are going to have Magic Arena, but I expect it to be too similar to Hearthstone, so I'm very skeptical about it, but I'm open to change my mind. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any suggestion, commentary, opinion, or whatever you want to share, don't forget to leave a comment. And until next time, sayonara.